inshallah. Gonna do another live. Let me just load everything up first. Okay. So today, what we'll do is I'm gonna do. Someone requested it last time. A proper book recommendation or a couple of good books that I've covered over the past couple of years, which will be interesting for you guys, inshallah, to cover. So that's what I intend on sharing today. Hope everyone is well, inshallah. Everyone that's joining. So yeah, but before we get into that, the very first thing is walaikum salam to who's joining here. Alicia, assalamu alaikum. DSHH, assalamu alaikum. Hope you guys are well, inshallah. Yes, we're going to do some book recommendations. And obviously, if you have any questions and stuff, we can address them in the comments as well. But before we do all of that, inshallah, the podcast is coming out tomorrow evening, the first one, the Epistemic Show, the Epistemic Podcast. So Brother Hamza, I put the trailer out a few days ago, inshallah, so hopefully you guys have seen that. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. That'll be 7 p.m. tomorrow evening. The first one is dropping. So definitely watch it. Please share it, inshallah. And let me know in the comment section below if things we can improve on, make better for the following future episodes, inshallah. So yeah, that's that. So yeah, we'll get into book recommendations. But as I do this, it'll be nice to get some recommendations from you guys as well. So any books that you've been reading that you found beneficial, please share those as well in the comment section. Be good to check those out too, inshallah. Okay, so there's a couple of books I've got here, which I think they're from a wide mix of different topics, inshallah. So I'm sure you guys will find them interesting, and they may cater to something you're looking for, something for everyone, I guess. And I got some books that I don't have with me, unfortunately, but because I don't have them on Kindle or audiobook. But what I will do is I'll share some of those with you as well as we go along, inshallah. So, for some reason my chat's not loading here. Let's see. Should be live. Ali Sheikh, sorry brother. Sorry, I'm reading it wrong. It's my dyslexia, it kicks in sometimes, so I read names or I see names that are not there, and it's weird sometimes. Sorry brother Ali Sheikh, hope you're well brother, inshallah. Okay, so the very first book, let's see, where do we start? Let's start with this one. The very first book I want to recommend, and I think anyone that's interested in the dawah, anyone that's looking to address atheism, the arguments for atheism, the arguments for Islam, things like this, I think this is probably one of the best books in the English language. It's no surprise, it's The Divine Reality by Hamza Tzortzis. This book is brilliant. I've read this a couple of times, and I know the thought process behind this book, mashallah. It took Hamza a good while and a lot of effort to write this book, but it's basically the culmination of all of his work over the years, all of the arguments that he's developed, all of the arguments that he's refuted or rebutted against, from an atheist perspective. This is a very good book. Let me know if you've read this. Anyone in the comment section that's read this book, let me know that as well, inshallah. But it is a brilliant book, and it covers all bases. So for example, in the beginning, in the first several chapters, he starts off with his journey, then begins with a definition of atheism. And it's important to start with definitions and be clear with this, because you don't want to be speaking to a ghost, And he breaks down the different types of atheism, the different causes for atheism, mesotheism, etc. And then he delves into the existential side of stuff before getting into the sort of more logical arguments. Life without God. What does it mean? The implications of life without God. Um, and this, for me personally, this is one of my most favorite sections, if you like, of this book, because he deals with things that the atheists don't want to address or talk about, which is, you know, the reality of one's existence in the absence of God. What does it mean to be without God? It touches upon happiness, ultimate meaning, objective moral values and duties, other things. And this is an integral part of the Dawah, brothers and sisters, because a lot of times when it comes to discussing with atheists, what ends up happening is we seem to get into this mode of discussion, which is they present an argument and we try to refute the argument, or we present an argument and they try to refute the argument. And in doing so, what we're doing is we're acknowledging that the atheist is in the position to attack what we're saying, try to refute what we're saying. We give them that position by, when they come to you and say, look, give me an argument for God's existence, and we give them an argument, we concede that this atheist or this individual is upon a worldview which allows them to stand there and discuss these topics with us. When in reality, in the absence of God, you can't make sense of the most fundamental aspects of our human existence. The very important things that we question throughout life. Who am I? Where have I come from? How to find true happiness? How to find true meaning? Ultimate meaning. These have no answers on atheism in the absence of God. Take meaning, for example. What is the ultimate meaning of life? Consider this question for a moment. Welcome salam to everyone that's joining, inshallah. What is the ultimate meaning of life? Think about that question in the absence of God. What is the ultimate meaning of life? What do you guys think? Stone says, bought it, not read it. Soon read it, inshallah. Yeah, definitely read it. It's a brilliant book, inshallah. Have read your book, Dying to Believe, Jazakallah khair. If you've read that book, we'll talk about that as well as we go along today, inshallah. Off-topic question. I wonder if the Dawah concepts of you English brothers still have a basis in Germany. I like to connect with them, brothers. There's a brother in Austria. His name is Sirtak. You could definitely try. He's Iman team, and he also works for IRA in Austria. So it would be good to get in touch with him, inshallah, for Dawah in Germany. That's the only brother I know in the area, inshallah. But let me know if anyone that's read this book, inshallah. Dying to Believe is the other book, The Divine Reality. But yeah, one of the key areas Hamza goes into is these existential questions, the implications of denying God. Before we get into the discussion, the debate, we present you with arguments. Okay, let's look at what does it mean to deny God. Ultimate meaning is one of the biggest things. Everyone seeks meaning, searches for meaning. In the absence of God, there is no meaning. And this is a hot topic, and this is a hot piece of coal, if you like, that the atheist doesn't want to hold on to or discuss or talk about, because there is no ultimate meaning in the absence of God. Think about this, brothers and sisters. Imagine there is the universe, everything that exists, there is no creator, there is no God. What does that mean? That means everything is an accident. You are an accident. Your life is an accident. And everything about you and your experience of the world is an accident. Where is the meaning then? Nothing created you. You came here by chance. You came into existence by chance. Where is the ultimate meaning? There is none. This was a problem that was faced, if you look at the history of the Enlightenment and modernity, especially after World War I, World War II, there was a big void. People were seeing all of this suffering and destruction, and they were thinking, well, what is the ultimate meaning of why am I here? Why are we here? What is the purpose of life? And this was in a world which was starting to deny the existence of God. That fundamental philosophy or outlook of reality was shifting. The worldviews were shifting. And people were asking these big questions. And this is why you had the advent of the existentialist philosophers who tried to fill this gap. They tried to provide answers. They tried to give, provide a surrogate, a replacement for God in some way, shape or form. And this is why the existentialists became very popular as well, because they, were trying to provide a solution for a big problem that people were facing. And that problem remains even today. They didn't do a good job. All they did was, they tried to engineer an answer, and they started to deal with more of the question of the meaning in life as opposed to the meaning of life, which is easier to deal with, because the meaning in life is whatever you make it, whatever you create, whatever you want to tell yourself. The meaning of life is not going to come from you, because you didn't create yourself. In the absence of God, there is no ultimate meaning. So they tried to fill that gap, didn't do it successfully. And this is why you see people like Jordan Peterson try to do the very same thing more recently. If you look at his work, essentially what he's doing is he's taking bits of Christianity, bits of existential philosophy, and mixing it together and trying to cater for people today, and providing those answers of meaning and purpose and happiness and all of this type of stuff. But it doesn't work, because essentially whatever they tell you, take the ideas of Nietzsche, to construct yourself, to develop yourself, to build yourself from nothing, to formulate this Übermensch, this high being, create your own morality. Yes, sounds very interesting and exciting, but ultimately, what are you doing? You're just making things up. You're deluding yourself. And eventually you wake up from this delusion, especially when you're engaging in, from your perspective, supposedly morally high things to do, such as, being moral, living responsibly, living with a responsibility towards the world and yourself, and all of these types of things. These are difficult things to do. And if they're not grounded in any meaningful way, intrinsically, in anything substantial, then eventually you're going to ask yourself, well, yeah, this is taking a lot of effort, but why do this? Should I just keep striving towards this, understanding and knowing that I've just made this up, this idea that this is what I should be doing? And then people stop, because there's just no point. It's not grounded in anything substantial. And this is the problem. In the absence of God, ultimately you are just a cosmic accident. And that's that. And that's why nihilism is the logical end. Nihilism is the logical conclusion for such people. And instead of worrying about all of this stuff, it makes more sense to just admit nihilism, and then if you can, escape that through hedonism, if possible, if you can get yourself to do that. Some people can, some people can't. So going back to the book, Hamza addresses this, A Life Without God in chapter 2. And then he goes into several evidences and arguments for the existence of God. The Quranic argument for God's existence, the contingency argument, etc. Morality, objective moral values and duties against something you cannot account for in the absence of God. And then he goes on to sort of break down some of the sort of key objections by atheists, namely the problem of evil and suffering. So it's a brilliant book. Really recommended. It's almost like a all-in-one type of book for anyone that's interested in arguments for the existence of God and Islam, and arguments against atheism, etc. It's a fantastic book to read, inshallah. Let's see, there's some comments and questions here before we move on to the next one. To worship Allah is the meaning of life. Absolutely. And this is what Allah has told us. And it's only going to come from Allah. It's not going to come from ourselves or a philosopher or through science. That knowledge is not going to come through these means, because philosophy and empiricism, these are human endeavors, and therefore they would not provide the answers to the ultimate meaning of life. They can't. It's impossible. All you can do philosophically is try to understand the meaning in life, or come up with the meaning in life, and that's what the existentialists try to do. So I don't understand some words, Ali Sheikh says, like epistemology, ontology, etc. Or I don't have knowledge of logical fallacies like straw man, etc. Will I need this for... No, you won't need this for reading the book, bro, inshallah. There may be some words every so often that pop up, but what he's done really well is simplify this. So it's very easy to understand, even from a lay perspective, bro. You won't need to understand these complicated terms or logical fallacies and things like this is not important. But generally speaking, if you do come across a word that you don't understand, like epistemology or ontology, just do a quick dictionary search, bro. It's very simple. You know, for example, epistemology is referring to the roots of knowledge. How do we come to knowledge? What are the different routes to knowing? That's essentially what we're talking about when you say the word epistemology. And ontology is referring to the base nature of reality and things. Uh, and yeah, so you can look these up in a dictionary and stuff like this, inshallah, as well. But there's not much there which is complicated in this book. Can you do a video touring your library? Yeah, it's not my library, brother. It's this Sapiens library, mashallah. So I will do that at some point. I'll probably need to get permission from the brothers if it's okay to do that. I'm sure it's going to be okay, but you know, I will ask if we can do that, and then I can show you around. Like I said in the last stream, it's not a well-organized library right now because all the books are all over the place. But we do need to put these in better order at some point, inshallah. Because when we moved office, we moved all the books in, but we haven't gotten around to sort of organizing them in a way which is easy to navigate. But I'll definitely do that, bro, at some point, inshallah. Okay, good question. Do you read all these books? No, I haven't read all these books. It would be a nice exercise to do at some point. But every so often we do go through some aspects of these books. So normally there's two ways you can engage books. You can engage them from a purely utilitarian perspective. Well, it's always utilitarian, isn't it? You're always reading books to gain something from the book itself. But what I mean by that is so sometimes say you're researching a specific topic or putting together a course or something. So you may pick up several books on a topic and then go through the contents and find relevant chapters and then go through a book like that. So maybe read certain chapters of a book as opposed to reading the whole book. That's normally how or at least how I engage most books. So I may, for example, take Divine Reality. Say I'm doing a course on the problem of evil and suffering. I'll read the chapter on the problem of evil and suffering and then put it aside and then maybe come back to it later on if I'm doing another topic and use it more as a reference book as opposed to reading beginning to end. There's very few books that I get through beginning to end, to be very honest with you guys. But yeah, it's always a good thing to do, but time is always a constraint, so it's harder to do sometimes. The next book I'm going to share with you, I have read from beginning to end. One reason being because it's a very small book, it's not a big book. But yeah, so it'll be nice to read all the books, but it's just difficult, especially if you have dyslexia, and reading is very difficult for me, right? I struggle with reading fast. I have to read very slowly. So it takes me like 3 times as long to get through a book than it would do for someone else that's good at reading. Brother Ace, you're asking a question about Ramadan and your difficulties, bro. I'm not a sheikh or a scholar, so I would say take this to a person of knowledge, maybe a local mosque, and get advice from them. Generally speaking, if you are not able to fast because of bad health, and if it's something temporary, then you don't have to fast, but then you can make up the fast later on. But if it's a long-term chronic condition, then it may be different. Then you can do an expiation, or there's ways of doing that. But you'll have to speak to someone of knowledge, bro. See a sheikh and get some advice from them in your specific condition, because some of these things are very specific as well. So you have to figure out, speak to someone of knowledge, inshallah, they'll be able to advise you. What books do you speak? Just some general books, Yusuf. What I'm doing is I'm just sharing some general books that I found beneficial over the years. So they're not in any specific category. They expand over different categories, bro, as we'll see. The first one we've just started. So the first one is the Divine Reality, which is more of a all-in-one type of book addressing atheism and positive arguments for Islam. So this is the first one. Yeah, Yusuf, I do go through many audiobooks. Actually, recently I've been going through more audiobooks than physical books. And I've actually gotten used to that now, which is probably a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. But yeah, I definitely go through a lot of audiobooks, bro. So especially when it comes to the topic of the recent topic of UFOs, jinn, the occult, etc., I've been going through a lot more audiobooks than physical books. What about Ali Sheikh asked, what about Burhan? Is it, yeah? So Burhan by Muhammad Hijab is much more of an academic type book, written very. That is more of a challenge to read. I would say for that you'll need some background uh, before getting into that one. Okay. Walaikum salam. Sakandar, I hope you're well, bro, inshallah. I'm social science student. I want to develop the understanding of Islam at the level where I can see social issues from Islamic lens. What books will you recommend for that? That's a very good question. So, say you're specializing in any specific topic. What I would recommend is first start with the Quran. Once you have some, if you have some good background knowledge on your specific area of expertise, when you go to the Quran, you read the Quran, you will find things in the Quran which, you know, you will see things there that other people won't be able to see. Some insights and things like this. So that's a powerful thing to do. As far as specific books in social sciences, it's not an area that I've gone into, bro, to be honest. But if I come across something, I will definitely share it with you. I'll probably share them with you on the next stream, inshallah. I find reading and listening at the same time is easiest. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so it depends, bro. Like if I'm going through a book with the intent of general knowledge, then listening is easy. I prefer listening, like an audiobook or something. But if I'm going through a book with a specific goal in mind, like okay, I need to extract information for research purposes, a presentation, a course, then I prefer going through a physical book because I can always go and underline things, I can pick out things, etc. It's much easier to do, highlight things, make notes, etc. With audiobooks, it's hard to do that, if you don't know what I'm saying. Because an audiobook, it's harder to go back. You can pause and go back and rewind back, but then it's harder to sort of work with as far as you're trying to make notes, underline things, quick references, etc. Much easier with the physical book, inshallah. Skandar says, Jazakallah khair for the reply. Yeah, I'll definitely look into it, bro. And I'll ask a few brothers that have read books on social sciences in particular, especially from an Islamic perspective, and get back to you, inshallah. So the next book, I mentioned this in the last live as well, is a book by Thomas Nagel, Mind and Cosmos. This was a book I was really interested in because there was a point where I was really looking into truth-bearing rational faculties, so human cognition and rationality, and how atheists or naturalists make sense of that in the absence of God on a purely naturalistic paradigm. This specific book is phenomenal because one, it's written by an atheist philosopher, right? Mind and Cosmos, right? So it's coming from not an Islamic perspective. And two, it's a small book, it's dense, it's focused, and it covers three core areas when it comes to this. And they are consciousness, cognition, and values or morality. Very clean, to the point. It is a bit of a difficult read, so you may need to spend a bit of time reading this or going through this, but it's a phenomenal book when it comes to making sense of consciousness, human cognition or rationality, and morals, ethics. Central areas or things, of concern to human beings, right? Think about it. When it comes to human experience and when it comes to being human, these are the things that really separate us from everything else and other animals, etc. to a large extent. Consciousness, which is at the heart of our experience of the world and our engagement in the world. Even when we reason, we're consciously reasoning. When we are being moral or ethical, we are consciously being moral and ethical. So consciousness is the heart of everything. Our engagement, our experience of this world. Hence, it's a big topic. And it's a troubling topic for naturalism and materialism because it's something they've struggled with, the hard problem of consciousness. They cannot quantify consciousness, that first person subjective experience that we have, that we experience, you cannot measure in a test tube, right? So, and Hamza has done some brilliant work on this as well. He has a whole article on consciousness. There's a whole chapter in the Divine Reality on consciousness itself and the hard problem of consciousness and how it's a big problem for atheism and naturalism. And this is good because now you can, if you've got both of these books, what you can do is you can read the Islamic perspective that Hamza is presenting, where he's collated all the data and looked at all of the science behind it and bringing it all together. And then you could get it from the horse's mouth, from an atheist perspective, and see the atheists highlight how it's a problem for materialism and naturalism, right? And this is why you have people like Daniel Dennett, who outright come out and say, "Oh, look, consciousness is an illusion; it's not real," which is pathetic, to be very honest with you guys. Because if you dismiss the most fundamental aspect of our experience, then you're dismissing everything. So essentially what he's saying when he makes the statement consciousness is an illusion, it makes no sense because it's coming from a conscious space, right? He's consciously coming to that conclusion, and he's yet denying consciousness. It is ridiculous. It's an absurdity, right? So consciousness is central. You cannot deny consciousness. You have to try to explain it and make sense of it. And it's a problem for naturalism and material sciences, because you can wire someone up. You can probes, as Hamza says, you can wire someone up with probes on someone's brain and pick up on neural activity and neural firings in the brain when someone eats a piece of chocolate. But how it feels for X to taste or experience that chocolate, that's his first person subjective experience, what he's feeling and experiencing. That you can never put in a test tube. You can never measure. There's a non-physical material aspect to consciousness, which cannot be accounted for purely through naturalism or materialism. And Nagel goes through this and explains this, and he also then extends this by saying that our conscious rational experience is also a big problem. Our truth-bearing rational faculties. The fact that we can arrive at truth as human beings. You cannot purely explain this through evolutionary explanation. It's impossible. And I know some people, I mentioned this before as well, in the atheists in the comment, they were like, "Oh no, evolution accounts for it." No, it doesn't. There's many atheists, academics, scientists, etc., philosophers who have highlighted the problem. Remember, evolution is concerned with survival, fundamentally. And highly evolved truth-bearing rational faculties, there's not a clear sort of passage to them developing. They give many examples. It's like, they give the example of mushrooms, for example. One of the authors mentioned the example of mushrooms, that there are many edible mushrooms, and then there are some poisonous mushrooms. Now, you don't need to have the faculties which allow you to discern between which is. You just don't eat the mushrooms, right? And you the belief that all mushrooms are poisonous would allow in survival, but it's not necessarily a true belief. And they give many other examples like this, that there's no need for our highly evolved truth or highly advanced truth-bearing rational faculties to have evolved when we could do with far less, right? And then there's a very interesting book, I don't know where it is, where the author really goes into this and he breaks this down on a deeper level, where he shows that to survive, you only need a certain piece. Cockroaches survive, and they're fantastic at survival. Yet they don't have the capacity to sit down and discuss quantum mechanics and philosophy, right? So it's not necessary for survival. Say you're you're in a jungle. It's easier to be cued by your brain that there's danger through just a flash of color or something, etc., than to have the whole aspect of being able to process what type of danger it is, how far it is, calculating these things. It's not needed. It's not necessary, as we can do as human beings. So it's not. The point is that highly evolved or highly advanced truth-bearing rational faculties that we display as human beings, survival is not contingent upon them. There's no need for them, but yet we have them. So how do you explain them? An evolutionary explanation is not sufficient in doing that. So he goes into this, Thomas Nagel, in a lot more detail, and several other authors as well who that cover this particular point. And then ethics and morals. This is another big thing. Hamza again covers this in his book. The fact that we need ethics and morals as human beings in human societies and civilizations. Yet objective moral values and duties cannot be accounted for in the absence of God. You can't peg them in anything. If anything, without God, moral values and duties become subjective, subject to the human being, subject to evolution, you can say, but then that's problematic on many different levels. So if it's just social consensus, well, that can change. It's not objective in any way. It's just a group of people coming together and saying that X is right and Y is wrong. And another group of people in another part of the world can say, no, Y is right and X is wrong. And say these groups come together and debate this. Well, who's right ultimately? I guess whoever overpowers the other. That doesn't make it objective, right? So to make it morals objective, there has to be an external anchor that we peg objective moral values and duties in. And in the absence of God, you don't have that anchor. If you say it's evolved, and again, divine reality covers this, you say morals have evolved like a hands, feet, and teeth have, or have fingernails have, well, then they will continue to evolve. And they are contingent upon and subject to survival. Doesn't mean that they are true or good in any way, shape, or form. They're just contingent upon survival. So Mind and Cosmos, very good book to read from an atheist perspective when it comes to consciousness, rational faculties, stuff like this, inshallah. Let's see. Book summaries may also be helpful. Yeah, we could do that, inshallah. So maybe in future, some future lives, we can do just book summaries, inshallah. I am sort of doing that in a way as well with the two books that I've covered already, but we can go into more detail. Seems like illusion is just a label, just push the question back. Yeah, of course it is. It makes no sense to call consciousness an illusion, because you're denying the very thing you need to be able to make such a conclusion in the first place. Can you see the absurdity there? It just doesn't make any sense. Assalamu alaikum salam. Generation Anonymous, hope you're well, inshallah. Did you ever see snippets of the discussion between Firaz Zahabi and Joe Rogan? Yeah, I have, a long time ago, yes. About science not being able to establish ultimate truth, rather it's limited to our faculties. Yes, yeah, absolutely. I did remember seeing it. I don't remember exactly what was said, but I do remember seeing it, and I do remember thinking that Firaz Zahabi's made some brilliant points in regards to consciousness, etc. And yeah, it's ultimately based upon our truth-bearing, these rational faculties. You see, science requires two things to work. Okay, fundamentally, axiomatically, a universe that has uniformity and truth-bearing rational faculties. Okay, what do I mean by a universe that's uniform? A universe that's uniform means that a universe that has some level of order. It obeys laws, right? Because if the universe was not obeying any specific laws and did not have any order, then it would be chaos, and you cannot study chaos, right? How can you study, like, one day you'll study a specific thing within the universe, the next day it will change, right? So you can't do science, you can't study it because it's constantly changing. And to do good science, you need to be able to observe something many times over to pick up on patterns and correlations and things like this. So you need a uniform universe, which we have, and therefore we can do science. And the second thing, which is you need truth-bearing rational cognitive faculties, because if you don't have those, then you can't study what's that universe, that uniform universe. It's impossible to study it because you don't have the tools to be able to study it. You need rational faculties. You need to be able to collect data, to observe things, to study that data, to connect the dots, and do all of these things. Right? So both of these things, a universe which has uniformity and order and truth-bearing rational faculties, you cannot account for in the absence of God, on naturalism or materialism. So by extension, what you can say is that science itself is an evidence that God exists, because to be able to do science, you need things which can only be accounted for if God exists. As we just discussed, truth-bearing rational faculties are not necessary from an evolutionary standpoint. So you have to be able to account for these things. From an Islamic perspective, we can account for truth-bearing rational faculties. Allah gave us the aql, the intellect. He created our rational faculties, so we can study His creation. And by studying His creation, it could lead us to His worship, because we could see the creation and appreciate the science present within His creation. Right? And this is a very important point. If you look at Al Imran, verses 190 and 191, where Allah says, indeed in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alternation of night and day are signs for people of understanding. who do two things. In the next verse, Allah says, they ponder deeply upon the creation of the heavens and the earth, and they remember Allah in every position. And by doing both of these things allows one to understand and appreciate the signs of Allah. And on the other hand, you see some of these naturalist atheist scientists like Richard Dawkins who do the science but can't see the signs, because on their worldview they don't have the capacity to be able to appreciate the signs of God, right? So anyway, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but the point is that what was the point? The point is you need truth-bearing rational faculties, and you need an ordered universe to be able to do science. And having both of these things, which we do have, hence we've been able to do science and make progress, strongly suggests that there is a creator, as opposed to suggesting that there is no creator, right? So indirectly arguing for God's existence. Okay. Okay, let's see. God Saad. Okay, yeah, I've heard of this guy. I've never watched this stuff. To be honest, I don't watch much of atheist stuff online anymore anyway. Yeah. Wa alaikum salam. Abrar, hope you're well, bro, inshallah. Hijab has done some videos refuting God. Okay, God. So that's good. Alhamdulillah. It's been addressed. If his hijab's dealt with him, there's no point going into these guys again. They don't have much good to say anyway. It's just promoted and pushed up by the powers that may be to push their agendas, which is becoming apparent now, from the Epstein files. These guys have been promoted and pushed and used to push a certain new ideological narrative for the world, which seems to be godlessness and atheism. Okay, next book, again, I'm going to recommend, is by John Lennox, God's Undertaker. Lennox is a Christian. Unfortunately, he falls short when he starts to defend his Christian perspectives. This is one of the times this was demonstrated was his debate between him and Richard Dawkins. He was absolutely annihilating Richard Dawkins when it came to arguing for God's existence. But when it came to specifically, talking about his theological views about Jesus and God, etc., that's where you see, he starts to break down a bit. But nevertheless, when it comes to arguments for the existence of God generally, John Lennox may Allah guide him, does a brilliant job. He presents these arguments in a very simple way. And this book's very good because not only does he address atheist arguments and share arguments for God's existence, he also goes into the limitations of science. And he is, I think he's a mathematician, but he knows his philosophy of science. So the second chapter is very interesting and one to read in this book. It's called The Scope and Limits of Science. And he presents some very simple, beautiful analogies which highlight the limitations of science. And I'll give you one of them. He goes into this idea of, science addressing the how, but not the why. And what atheists try to do is conflate the how and the why. Okay? So he gives an analogy. So what he shows is that, imagine you come over to his house and the kettle is boiling. Okay? Now, you ask him how the kettle is boiling or why the kettle. So the why is of two types. There's the how type of why and then the why type of why. Okay? So you can ask the question, why is the kettle boiling? And he gives you the how type of answer. Well, the kettle is boiling because it's plugged into the mains, there's electricity flowing through the cable, heating up the coil in the kettle, and it's boiling the water. Okay, that's one explanation. But the why type of explanation is, well, the kettle is boiling because I wanted a cup of tea. Okay, both explanations are correct, but they address two different perspectives or aspects. And the analogy applies to science because science deals with the first type, right? Science deals with how things work, right? Such as the kettle plugged in, etc., etc. But it doesn't deal with the why. And just because science gives you the how, it can't explain the why. And just because science can't explain the why, it doesn't mean there is no why. Okay, very important distinction to understand. So how, does do rain clouds form? Sure, science can give you a how type of answer. Oh, they form because of X, Y, and Z process. But why? What is the why behind it? Science can't tell you about. Now, just because science can't tell you about that why doesn't mean the why doesn't exist. And science would never suggest that the why doesn't exist. However, some atheist scientists or naturalists would bring up their philosophy into it and try to tell you, oh, there is no why, there's no need for why because science has explained the how. No, it doesn't make any sense, right? It doesn't mean just because that question of why is outside the scope of science that there is no answer anymore. And beautifully, there's some verses or ayat in the Quran, such as when Allah says, you see the birds flying through the sky with their wings stretched out, and I'm paraphrasing. And then Allah says, none holds them up except Allah. And this is a very powerful verse because, on one end, Allah is telling us the how, but also addressing the why. Sure, the bird's wings are spread out and the bird flaps his wings, and this creates, or goes, against air resistance, and it creates lift and all of this type of stuff. But then ultimately, it's Allah. He's the one that created the bird, and He's the one that created the wing, and He's the one that created the atmosphere and air and all of the things, and all of the things that allow for the bird to fly. Ultimately, it's Allah who's ultimately in control of every single thing at every single given moment. So there's the how explanation of the world and reality, and then there's the why. And science can only deal with the how. So this Lennox does in a brilliant way in his book, and hence, if you just read chapter 2 from this book, I think you'll benefit a lot, inshallah. Are you from in India? No, I'm from. Originally, my parents are from Pakistan, but I live in the UK. Let's see. Yeah, may Allah make it easy for the brothers in India. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on, especially politically as well. And the Hindutva crackheads, to be honest, are doing some crazy things there. And that's not to say all Hindus. Many Hindus are very simple people, and we've given dawah to, and I've spoken to many Hindus, over the years, and many are very nice people, and may Allah guide them. But then there is a faction amongst them, this politically driven faction, which is doing some absolutely despicable things, unfortunately. Yeah, so it's rough, I know, in India at the moment. May Allah make it easy for the brothers and sisters there, inshallah. I mean, yeah, it's difficult, bro. I can't advise in regards to how you can navigate the dawah in India. I'm not there. I don't know the situations there, but just be careful and do the best you can. I guess just as some general advice. Don't do anything ridiculous that's going to get you in trouble, and end the dawah ultimately. Just there's ways of engaging. Walaikum salam. Too cold. Hope you're well, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Walaikum salam. How would you approach the topic of hijab ban in the Western country? On what basis should we argue? When we use the Quran, they would just say, yeah, so you can argue from the perspective of equal rights, freedom of practicing your own faith, from a sort of liberal perspective. I mean, what they're doing is going against their own worldview, essentially, to ban, the hijab, etc., and to oppress Muslims in this way. I think it's ridiculous, to be honest. Someone well versed. I'm not too well versed in sort of political discourse and stuff like this. So, but I know brothers that are Abdullah Andalusi and others, mashallah. I'm sure they're addressing this, and they'll probably be the best guys to give you a coherent answer on how to specifically tackle stuff like this. But philosophically, I'm sure there's ways, and I'm pretty sure, even if you address it from the perspective of challenging them from the perspective of their own fundamental philosophy of their sort of secular liberal values, you'll be able to break it down, inshallah. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I haven't read hardly any of this book And the reason is because someone that has actually filled me in on some of the key things within this book. But they recommended this a lot. Subur, basically. If you're interested in the topic of evolution and the problems with the Darwinian mechanism and evolution as a whole, this is by him. Sheikh Abdul Rahim Green and Sabur both recommend this book. It's called Darwin's Fairytale. So definitely check this one out, because it's as an introductory book on the topic, aside from obviously the books that Sabur is publishing now, mashallah. This is one that Sabur has highly recommended many times to me. It goes over a lot of stuff. Let's just go through this together. Let's look at the contents page together. So you got Darwin's dilemma, where Darwin first went wrong about man, but what about war, pestilence, and all that, population, privilege, and retreat. Okay, so we can't really glean much from the contents page because there's some. Look, a new religion, Paley's revenge, etc. So yeah, apparently this is a very good book. Yeah. So if anyone's interested, definitely have a read of this one, inshallah. But there's nothing more I can say about that. While I was picking out the books, I remembered I saw this. Then I remembered how much Sabur recommended this book back in the day. And not only Sabur, but Sheikh Green as well. So this is another good one. Okay, this one, let's shift gears a bit. Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi, this for me personally, it was such a profound read. And I read it at a time in my life where I was really trying to sort of figure myself out again. But it's a brilliant book, and especially part one of this book. When it comes to and I think before Ramadan, this probably will be highly recommended. One of the books, it's called The Invocation of God, in the translation. When it comes to our relationship with Allah, our position with Allah, I can't recommend this enough. It really talks about the base fundamental things that we should always refocus on and revisit in such a beautiful and profound and motivational way that it will encourage you to engage in bringing those things into your life. It's such a beautiful book, honestly, especially part one of this book is so profound. It's so motivational. I think that's what's really struck out and appealed to me about this book, was just how motivational it is. Because a lot of times we read books, and from a knowledge perspective, yeah, they're brilliant, mashallah. Yeah, we learn a lot. But when it comes to implementing those things, they don't really motivate and drive us as much. But this is one of those books that really is going to get you excited about putting these things into practice that you read, inshallah. So yeah, this is highly recommended. Highly recommended. The Invocation of God by Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi. This is a brilliant book. Let's see some comments that come up. Have you read Ibn al-Qayyim's book about the problem of evil? No, I don't recall reading that book. Let me know if it's good though, inshallah. I'll definitely pick you up. Like I said, give me some recommendations as well, because there's so many good books out there, and I'm sure you guys have read some very interesting books as well over the years, so please do share whatever you have. But I'll make a note of that one, inshallah. If you got the specific name, please share it with me as well. How long have we been going for? 5. Called On Divine Wisdom. Okay, Jazakallah khair, Yusuf, bro. I'll definitely pick that up, inshallah. So the other book, which I don't have with me right now, however, which I really recommend, is A Letter to a Disciple by Al-Ghazali. That's another beautiful, simple, short booklet. I would say it's a booklet, which really takes you back to the foundations, and again encourages you in his own style to implement those foundational things. And he's reminding his student, who's spent many years studying and learning and gaining knowledge and all of that type of stuff, to go back to the basics, implement the fundamentals. And I remember an analogy that he gives in the book. You know, it's all good and well having a beautiful sword, but it's useless against a lion or a tiger, whatever the animal was, if you don't know how to wield it, if you don't know how to swing a sword, right? So, and it's a profound analogy because it's the truth for most of us, many of us these days. We have a lot of knowledge, we read a lot of things, we watch a lot of things, but we don't know what to do with what we've read and what we've learned to the degree where it's not really impacted our lives and it hasn't really changed us as people. You know, and Ramadan is all about that. And we're literally days away now from Ramadan. Um, and I was speaking to a brother earlier today, may Allah bless him. He gave me a very beautiful piece of advice. He was like, I asked him what he's planning on doing this Ramadan, and he's expecting him to say, I'm going to read this book and do this and do that. And all he said was, this Ramadan I have one goal, which is not to sin. SubhanAllah. You know, we always forget the basics and the fundamentals. You know, just don't go back to the basics. Work on yourself. Don't sin. Do things that are pleasing to Allah as much as you can. Read Quran. Focus on your salah. If it's been lagging for the past 6 months, year, struggling with it, now's the time. You know, really try to perfect it again, inshallah. Yusuf Al-Ghazali's book is free as an audiobook on YouTube if anyone wants. Oh, brilliant. MashaAllah, I didn't know that. Excellent. So yeah, Letter to a Disciple is brilliant book. You probably, if you're listening to it, probably get through it in an hour or so. Okay, so the next book I recommend, again, I don't have a copy with me right now. And this is my book, The Dying to Believe, for anyone that is struggling with existential issues, trying to figure their way out, what life is all about, what the meaning of life is, what the purpose is. I share my journey, I share some arguments through my journey, and I think you may find that beneficial, inshallah. It's a very personal book. It's a very difficult book for me to write. I really struggled with it because I had to relive certain experiences in my life which I didn't want to relive. But yeah, it's basically me sharing my story and sharing the reasons for me believing the certain things I ultimately ended up believing and coming to the conclusions I did. So hopefully that's going to be a beneficial book, inshallah, for you guys too. So yeah, that's another book. Next one. This is one I read a long time ago, many years ago. And I know there's some really popular books on Islamic history, or lost histories of Islam and the Golden Age and stuff like this. But this is one most people don't talk about. It's called The Lost History, The Enduring Legacy of Muslim Scientists, Thinkers and Artists. It's by Michael Hamilton Morgan, this book here. What I really love about this book, obviously the information in this you'll find in many other books on Islamic history. But what really stands out to me about this book is just the style he's written in. It's almost like he takes you back to that time, right? It's beautiful. Like each one of the chapters starts with a story. Like I remember, like even today, I remember one of the chapters, which is on Ibn, I think it's Abbas ibn Farnas, if I'm not mistaken, if that's what his name was. The guy that was working on flight, and he was trying to make a aircraft or something. You know, and the way he paints the picture of the day that he, you know, climbs the top of this building, and he's about to take his first flight, etc. It's amazing. You know, the way he paints he takes you there into that moment. So it's written beautifully, this book. And if you're looking for an engaging one to really, you know, get immersed in, this book, honestly, is phenomenal the way it's written. So yeah, that's highly recommended, and I'm sure most of you haven't read that one as far as Islamic histories are concerned. So yeah, again, as far as the information in there, is it all accurate? I don't know. Maybe there's some mistakes, etc., etc. But if you want a really engaging history of Islam, the Golden Age, Muslim thinkers, scientists, their developments in Islamic history, how they may have benefited the West, etc. This is one of those books which is brilliant. The author is Michael Hamilton Morgan. Michael Hamilton Morgan. Definitely check that one out. It's a really good book, inshallah. So yeah, those are a couple of books for you guys, inshallah. What we'll do is, there's a couple more. Maybe every session I could bring a few other books that I come across that I've read a long time ago and share them with you guys. But yeah, may Allah bless you guys. I think we'll wrap up to keep it nice and short today, inshallah. And we'll do another one in a couple of days. So may Allah bless you guys, and I'll speak to you guys in 2 or 3 days' time. If you have any questions, etc., let me know in the comment section. And check out the podcast when it drops tomorrow, inshallah, 7 p.m. UK time, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, brothers and sisters. May Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum.